Greetings and salutations! For those of you who guessed last time, I was making a fridge and freezer with a small area to filter out all the heat. You were correct. Now I have actually put a vent into where I'm planning on having the animal pen to hopefully keep them warm during winter. But right now I am fully aware I'm probably building too large. With the lack of power, this is all just, well, preempting what I'm going to have to do. And I'm making it 2 layers thick. I've been told that the heat sort of travels through a single tile block, so by making it double thick, I thought I'd try and experiment with the heating system in Rimworld, as it's something I really do need to learn more of. However, Ra has found himself very busy, constantly working as we constantly need more bricks. The mixture of marble and granite is a curious one. I'm not going to like how it fully turns out, but I think it'll do for now. Marble for the niceness on the inside where our colonists will see, and granite on the outside for a bit of defense so it doesn't get damaged easily by stray shots. With the walls near complete, it's also time to get a floor in here. And I favour slate. Slate is usually useless. It's far too weak to really be used in defences, it's too slow to be used as doors, but as flooring it looks nice, and thankfully for us there's plenty of slate ruins around here, meaning that we can clear up the area and reduce the amount of cover for any incoming attackers. By the afternoon, Rara's job is almost complete. With nearly 10 levels in construction, the previously slow progress has now raced ahead, especially without the need to eat or sleep. The colony almost having a functioning kitchen as well. Though we still didn't have a butchering point, so that was something to work on in the future. I've been tempted to put it in the fridge, as that's been recommended, and that cleanliness doesn't really affect the food that's already been made. As usual, the cost has come in with Ra's mood. He's a little bit miserable, but I think he deserves a break, and perhaps he'll take use of the chess set at last. Though he does like his walks, so maybe a little bit of column A, column B today. As night falls, more ruined chunks of the spacecraft we'd abandoned fall down on the rim, and with them, a tribble. Thankfully a dead tribble. I'd forgotten I'd added these into the game, and these things can be a tiny furry plague of epic proportions, devouring everything in an unending wave of reproduction. Thankfully, though, we will not have to deal with that, and perhaps we can even skin the little bugger. Instead, we could focus on the upcoming festivals. I do enjoy this addition to the Rim, and I've been playing in my free time on a different save. I do really enjoy these elements that have been added in the latest DLC, but at the same time I really dislike the requirements for several focuses. I feel like some of them should be more, well, accessible to tribals and the like, without the requirement of high-tech additions to make them actually really good or useful. The reliance on room impressiveness as well is also a pain. You can't really have these festivals out in the open, you need a very specifically made room for them. The evening also brought in a fresh harvest of rice, something that was vitally important with the oncoming winter. Hopefully we'd have some pemmican or even kibble made just for emergencies. While Ra didn't need to eat, sooner or later we would have colonists that would have to. As dawn broke, it was also time to make some plans. I like to think that the logical mind of our robot companion would have chosen the same choice I did, because putting it here would mean that we'd have a airlock into the ancient danger eventually, and there was nothing really of value here that could be destroyed or damaged. It also had the additional benefit of being a crude extension to the defensive wall of our base, meaning it would take that slight bit longer for opponents to come charging round the corner. Once again, the majority of the work was finished by nightfall. With us now having 10 ranks of construction, it was really showing that we were racing through these projects, and the granite door I would trust to keep anything untoward out of the base for now. Again, Unlike most other places, this door was either going to be open or shut all the time, so there was no real need for it to be having speed. It was also just completed in time to take part in the Fair of the Forests. The room's mediocre appearance wasn't going to help, but at the very least it was something we could work on, and even if Ra didn't really enjoy it this time, I'm sure that in the future this will become a great place for a centre of our colony. The new day brought new opportunities. A friendly AI got onto our frequency and actually managed to contact us. So if we wanted to trek onto the opposite side of the planet, we could perhaps get off by ourselves. One of these days I'm going to have to do Ship to the Stars, but for now we had people to rescue and a colony to build. Also, if we want to go for a trip to the stars, we'd have to abandon our little dryads. I really want to see these things mature and grow up, so I won't be doing that anytime soon. Also, I do need to remind Ra to eventually bring in the harvest. He's a bit lackluster when it comes to the hauling, but he's ever so busy at everything else. I did have a slight moment of relief, however, as I noticed that the dryad could survive quite comfortably in both hot and cold temperatures. Not really knowing how I can interact with these, the last thing I wanted them to die through winter. It was also time to potentially visit the neighbours as well. We had a lot of junk, to be honest, odds and ends and bits and pieces that we needed to get rid of, and perhaps in one of these towns we could maybe find something of use. Heck, even more wood, meaning that we wouldn't have to cut down trees, would have been nice, or maybe some pemmican or other long-lasting goods. So, stocked up on poor quality weapons and a handful of silver, it was time for Ra to wander off into the wilderness. This also gives us a chance to actually see which side of the map he'll be leaving by and what side of the map we'll probably get traders from, which was always useful. I also discovered at this point that the Warforge, much like night owls as well, are always forced to travel during the day and rest during the night, even if they don't need to, or would prefer not to. Something that's a little bit of a overarching bug or just annoyance in RimWorld, but fingers crossed eventually it'll be changed. But again, the dawn always brings new opportunities, and Castle Ruins were very near where we were planning on going. Something we could go stock up on. Now, I didn't have much carrying capacity, but who knows? We might find something useful even if the town doesn't have anything in there itself. Finally arriving, the townsfolk were more than happy to trade, thankfully taking all those useless steel weapons off our hands. Though it was a little curious just what odds and ends they did have, various materials, all kinds of clothing. The chickens in particular were very, very tempting, as was the architect and the stuffed dolls. But for now, it just wasn't what we needed, and in the long run that would have been more of a problem than a boon. Should the chickens still be there come spring, then perhaps we'd purchase them later, but right now it was time to head to those castle ruins, and fingers crossed we get some very nice goodies from our scavaging. And it seemed like the castle would be quite the Monty Hall, with so much wood available to be deconstructed, some leftover food, crossbows, gold, silver, bedrolls and beds. It was truly something that would have been of great use. This was going to be great if only we could carry it all. But perhaps the tales of the androids' travels had gotten out, and here we were ambushed by one of our enemy factions. The annoying buggers starting to lay waste to the items we were planning on claiming. We didn't really have time to play it safe, even though this terrain would make it an absolute nightmare to try and shoot the battle axe wielding nutjob. Alerted by the miss of the initial volley, our opponent here charged in and managed to get a few good hits in. It was really quite worrying. Perhaps our journey would be over so soon. But much to my remarkable surprise, it turned out that the Warforges self-heal, automatically tending wounds and being unable to bleed. This was truly great news for our lone colonist, but it wouldn't help if you got chopped into itty-bitty pieces. After all, you can only regenerate so much, and his opponent was doing her best to ensure that he would not have the chance. The dangerous game of cat and mouse continuing, until our assailant finally got distracted, deciding that since Ra was too nimble, a piece of furniture would do instead to vent their frustrations. Not that Ra was being particularly consistent himself, obviously having pathfinding issues due to the massive crack in his skull. That meant that he couldn't really take advantage of his opponent's distracted nature until she decided to light a few fires. Something that would possibly be a massive disaster, considering that it was in a small room full of wood. Indeed, by the time that the opponent had died, the fire had already taken hold quite severely, the wooden walls igniting to a massive blaze, and the nearby trees also beginning to set on fire as it spread through the grass. Beyond our capability to cope, all we could do now was try to grab the most precious items and hopefully move them to somewhere that was potentially safe from the oncoming blaze. Leaving our assailant to be cremated, I decided to save the smoke leaf joint. Perhaps it would sell better than the hatchets, I wasn't really sure due to the various factions having various new drug laws. Also, Ra's head injury seemed to give him a bit more strange behaviour as well. Trying to nap in the middle of a blaze is not what I would call health and safety standard. Thankfully, Ra managed to put out many of the fires spreading to the west, but the southeast of the castle was completely consumed, the roof falling in as it lacked the supports, and the fire spreading into the nearby grasslands and forest. Creeping ever more northwards, eventually it was going to get back into the castle, and there was no way we were going to stop it. Whilst we could stop a few small embers here and there, it was now clear to me that we needed to move everything we could. We simply didn't have time. Leaving what had become a giant funeral pyre before it had spread even further, we took what we could. Kibble, wood and heavy crossbows being our main haul. Sadly, we had to leave the bed behind and much of the wooden furniture we didn't have time to deconstruct. But we were carrying what we could, and it was better than nothing.